Hi everyone, this is Benjamin Sens from Boss Construction Group. I'm here with our partner today from Reliable Lien Search, Brenda Arboleda. And we're here today to discuss a number of things, like our new partnership. I was looking for a really long time to find a lien search company who's amazing, who their work is amazing and level of service is amazing. So that's where Brenda and I met.
Thank you.
And Brenda, you know, I do permit resolution with a municipal background, and your background was started in the title industry?
Yes, it did. Yeah. I started in title about 20 years ago or so. I had a property management before that.
Yeah?
With a real estate attorney who took me in pretty much with very little experience, but I started as a pre-processor and worked my way up to closing. Decided to get my title agent's license somewhere along the way.
Cool.
And yes, you know, just working in the real estate industry in that capacity kind of opened my eyes and my husband's eyes, who's my partner.
That's cool.
To the need for a product that would provide a little bit more information and detailed and added convenience more than anything else to the title industry in regards to the municipal lien searches. And
most of our viewers are real estate professionals. Some are property owners throughout South Florida.
Yes.
Basically, how I think of a lien search is that you are gathering a lot of public and sometimes private information that has to do with properties, correct?
Correct. For the most part, it's the public records that we're retrieving from the municipal offices that have a jurisdiction in whatever property is under contract that they want to search. You know, we pretty much obtain all the information from the tax records down to any utility balances or any deficiencies that they need to correct prior to the sale.
And again, with lien searches in particular, time and transparency is very important.
Absolutely.
Like we just went over a multi-jurisdictional one from Tamarack.
Right.
And Miami Gardens, which is Miami-Dade County
Indeed.
and North Miami Beach Water. So all of these things have to be pulled together quickly with code enforcement and building.
Absolutely, yeah. We realize, you know, when two parties enter into a contract, time is essential. They have only a certain amount of time to really decide if that transaction is going to move forward. And we like to provide as much information to those parties as possible within a certain time frame so that they're able to make an educated decision on whether they're going to proceed with it or not.
Now, what's really cool is we're getting real estate professionals and sellers to pull this search
Absolutely.
when they list the property.
Yes.
Or if they want to know exactly what's going on their property. Again, very, you know, useful information.
Yeah. It's essential that they obtain the information as early on as possible. Ideally, even when a listing agent is considering a property, you know, to list. And the reason for that is, as much as we try to control the timing, at the end of the day, we rely on the city halls that are providing this information and pulling the record.
With 10, I mean, even Lauderhill was many business days.
Yes. Some of them can provide it as quickly as 24 hours, 48 hours, but then there are some that require weeks.
Yeah.
You know, it just depends on the volume of requests that they handle, the manpower that's in the city hall to pull these records and send them out to us. And so we don't want to be caught in a situation where the information is coming after the fact. We want to be proactive, and definitely the sooner that the parties are aware of the deficiencies and the items that are being reported, the more time there is to resolve them.
And you have clients throughout the state, throughout the country.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm just a South Florida resolution, but again, like the point is, do you see this? Do you see the permitting and code violations and like we have, you know, over 60 municipalities just in Miami-Dade and Broward, right?
That's correct.
So, for example, I was in Monroe County and Key West, working over there with a partner trying to resolve some issues on a commercial property, and just very interesting. You know, the guy's like, his name is Curtis Gomp, real good RE/MAX agent in Isla Mirada and in Key West and Key Largo. He tells me, we just go to City Hall.
Right.
And I tell him it doesn't work like that in South Florida. Even I've worked in the building department. People, realtors, sometimes owners call me on the phone. Are there any permits and code violations? You know, sometimes I was able to help them over the phone. Obviously, the city would like you to do a public records request
course.
or search, which that's how they make money, right?
Exactly. They draw revenue from these requests. Each city hall, and within each city hall, even each department may have a separate fee that they assess for retrieving those records.
Sure.
So it is a source of revenue for them, but I think essentially, or I like to think essentially, that what they're trying to do is provide the most official information that's available.
Sure.
And rather than just walking up or maybe making a phone call where it's a little bit less formal,
Yeah.
You want to get the records in writing and hopefully signed by a city clerk with that city seal on it, and know
Yeah.
that you're getting the most accurate records possible.
And I remember, I mean, I did a lot of work in Coral Springs, worked for the city of Weston. When I talked to a lot of these permit coordinators and people, which I used to do that work, they tell me that all of the information all of the public information is not the metadata or data, it's not imported into the public portal, which means that they, every couple of years or every so often, these cities, while they're not responsible to retain hard records only for, I think, 8 or 10 years,
Right.
they have a lot of information or metadata from previous permitting systems.
Exactly.
So when I originally started and I saw other people doing, they're like, yeah, we went on the city's website and it didn't capture all the information.
No. It doesn't have all the information, and occasionally there's a gap period.
Yeah.
And that you're not covering when you help yourself to that information that's on
Yeah.
that portal.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that that portal is in sync
Yeah.
with the city's
Yeah.
current network. And many times they don't update it as regularly or as in the same time frame
Yeah.
as they would, obviously having it live in their
We always saw, for example, like, props to Broward County property appraiser and Marty Kerr over there, our friend. The bottom line is, what's really interesting is that the property appraiser, amazing information. When you get down to the city level, it's like it's done, and again, there's a lot of facets with the permitting like, I wish all of these cities were as good as the property appraiser, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, the thing is, the infrastructure, is very different, and you have some city halls that even operate out of separate buildings.
Yeah.
One department is in this building and another department is at a different
Yeah.
address, and so a lot of times the information is not necessarily as centralized as it is in your property appraiser's
Yeah.
office. And
Or even a lot of these cities, like I was a private contractor.
that's right.
So sometimes, from what I saw, level of service could be in many places. Level of
course.
service might be diminished. Level of service might be better. But a lot of these cities, they're relying on private companies
Exactly.
to hold these information, to operate building departments and
Right.
code enforcement,
Exactly.
which again don't produce revenue for the city, but it's a service that's needed for the public.
Exactly, right, exactly. And it just creates, a situation where maybe you're relying on that third party to bring back that information. They've gone out on the field, they have their notes, they have their information, but there's a gap period. By the time they come back to an actual desk to provide all that information and then put it into a system. You also have the people that are working within the city that have the double task of keeping the records in the computer system, but also going out on site, going out on the field and inspecting these properties and then bringing back the records and bringing them up to date into the system.
And also what's very interesting is every city, like I was doing with Riviera Beach the other day, some open permits, some work without permits weren't code violations or liens.
Right.
They had a flag in the system and they didn't let the buyer pull a new roofing permit because they were kitchen and bathroom. And so all of these cities, like you're saying, they have different processes.
Exactly. Each one has a different process, and where in one city or one municipality you might have an open permit that translates into a violation automatically. You have other city halls where they just run independent, and one doesn't necessarily affect the other. It just depends on how they're organized and what their ordinances are within each city hall.
Have you ever seen like a place like South Florida? I know you do business in a lot of areas of the state and the country, but so many jurisdictions in one area.
South Florida is very unique, and I would say, even more specifically, Miami-Dade, is a very unique market. You have a lot of areas, pockets of properties where there's multiple jurisdictions,
or there's unincorporated,
or there's areas that were part of the county and now there's a city that's incorporated recently, but there are still records and things, efficiencies that need to be cleared up. You know, sometimes it's just administrative, but still, you want to clear it up, you want to wipe it out, and you know, start fresh with, you know, the new city. Or
so many people assume because you're at a property, you see like a garbage or trash container, and it says North Miami Beach on there, it says Miami-Dade County, and you assume you're in that jurisdiction.
Right.
Just from a municipal background, I know if the folio starts with 30, it's unincorporated. If it starts with 34, it's Miami Gardens.
Pretty much.
And then the PCNs in Palm Beach County, they don't have folio numbers.
Right.
It all kind of relates from the top, like the section, township, you know, range. It kind of relates to intergovernmental coordination, like is what you spoke about.
Of course, absolutely.
And we don't have that so much on a regional level.
No, I don't think we do.
Where we're all talking.
Exactly. And you know, so there's just a lot of areas where you have, you know, your black and white, but then a lot of gray somewhere in between, and most of the properties in South Florida fall in that gray area. You know, where they were maybe part of this city and now became part of this one, or you know, are serviced by the adjoining city because they just happen to be on their, you know, water lines and what have you. So, you know, it's just a unique market.
Do you think some of these cities are charging too much for their info? They all vary, right?
Yes.
All of these cities.
Yes.
So again, a search could cost $50 somewhere where it costs $250 somewhere.
Absolutely.
And this is
and
within
beyond.
the county.
There are some that cost even $500 to obtain the information. And it just depends on each city. Within each city, even departments. You know, they also have different levels of service depending on the timeline. You know, sometimes if you're on a short, you know, deadline, you might want to upgrade to a rush service. And then that obviously impacts the price as well. But it really depends. Each city has its own price structure.
And I know the state, like I know from my CAM license, they regulated associations for estoppels.
Yes.
But the local governments, they're like a beast, like an animal, like I think I am, you know?
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how many of them, you know, will have their, you know, their city, you know, council meetings will pass an ordinance. You know, somebody will propose that these fees need to change, and they need to change effective immediately. And many times, you know, we're hit with the surprise the next morning that the city has now changed. We have letters on their way to City Hall, and you know, we no longer have the proper fee attached.
Effective October 16th.
Absolutely. And you know, once that ordinance passes, I mean, there's really you know, many times it's not even our own city that we're citizens of, where, you know, we feel we have a voice, you know, to say this is unfair. Or, you know,
well, I mean, essentially, the city works for the residents and the business owners.
For their residents and their business owners.
You represent, you know, them.
Absolutely,
you know?
Absolutely. It's a little frustrating part of the process, but you know, it's just in the nature of the business that we do, and all we can do is in turn relay it to our customers and explain, you know, this is something that's just happened. And I think pretty much anybody in the real estate industry, especially here in South Florida, understands things change very rapidly here. So
and a lien search company is basically a process-oriented company.
Absolutely.
When I was looking over the commercial lien search for Tamarack, again, 143 pages. I saw emails going back and forth from, and this is within the lien search report, which I haven't seen many companies do, emails going back and forth from city staff to your staff, and verifying costs, and even verifying information that the buyer needs. Because again, like if you have 22 different businesses on a commercial property, they might charge you 22 times.
Absolutely.
So you also want to keep in mind, like kind of like I do. So you know, I'm not looking to create work for myself. I'm looking to represent my client the best. Obviously, if one segment of information would be useful to them.
Of course. We try to keep the transparency, you know, as we're dealing with not only the city halls, but especially our customers, because we know at the end of the day, they have an end customer that they're accountable to as well. And it's very important for us
careful.
To be cautious, to be considerate, because we do come from that background. Again, to know that these surprises can be avoided if from the start we say, you know, we've identified that this is going to cost a little more, or it's going to take a little bit longer, and just kind of keep that line of communication open so that everybody that's involved in the transaction has all the information that they need, you know.
In our industry, especially in South Florida and real estate and construction, a lot of people are very, you know, heavy on the trigger. and again, to do your job right,
exactly,
you need to focus on time and process and adequate level of service.
Yes. I mean, you have to find that balance. And, you know, we're in a very unique industry when we provide these lien searches, because we understand the urgency from the real estate standpoint, but we're dealing with government offices that don't always empathize with that urgency. And so we kind of have to balance both. You know, try to get the city halls to work with us, you know, within the time limits that we have, but to also be realistic and sincere with our clients, and that we're doing the very best possible to provide it as quickly as we can, but we've got to give them the time to pull the records, give you the correct records, and not take any shortcuts and jeopardize the transaction.
Yeah, and I saw even we were talking about before, like, you know, a couple of years ago, you know, the title companies got upset at some lien search companies when you guys were pulling information for special taxing districts, for CDDs, community development districts.
Exactly.
Again, these are areas that I'm familiar with on the local level, because I studied urban planning. I worked in local government. And you might just see them at the bottom of the property appraiser, but these are special assessment districts, and you've seen them in your as-is contracts, and you've seen the Florida Bar put that in there, because, and again, they're designing a contract for all of Florida where special taxing districts might be heavy and more applicable in the South Florida area.
Of course.
So absolutely. I thought that's pretty interesting.
You know, a couple of years ago, there was a conversation, you know, had about the need to disclose this information, to the point where there was a statute that was passed that required this disclosure to happen, you know, for specifically any Miami-Dade County properties. And, you know, obviously the conversation, we don't know how it was triggered, but we definitely want to be a part of it and say, we've been disclosing this information all along, because we realize the importance of, you know, informing the buyer that, hey, you're going to be subject to these requirements, or subject to this responsibility, as well as other requirements, you know, such as needing a certificate of reoccupancy before you move in, or, you know, having to register the property if it's been sitting vacant, and, you know, those kind of things.
But you guys do the right thing, and that's the point that I wanted to emphasize, because say a lien search company doesn't reach out to a special taxing district, whether the information costs money or whether the information doesn't cost any money, that's part of your process.
Of course, yeah. It's something that we feel that, you know, we're required to provide. In essence, it completes the package. Otherwise, you're not giving them the full disclosure, all the information.
And so many, you know, I've been preached throughout South Florida, talking with a lot of title attorneys and companies and agents. You know, they've even pulled out of the Florida Bar as-is contract who's to take care of permits and code violations, because these are found usually outside the inspection period.
Exactly.
So then it kind
goes
of
beyond the timeline, right?
So then it, and you know, I mean, I talk to agents, investors, real estate professionals, people in the South Florida business community. You know, how are you as an agent going to go after the inspection period, after you negotiated, to then find problems, you know, before you close on the property?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I mean, is what we're providing is what we're providing a solution for that, or the answer?
I think it's a great solution, because it allows you to take that proactive approach, and to hopefully have that information accessible to you before you reach that deadline. And most of the items that we find, you know, when we call them deficiencies, but they're things that are not necessarily a deal end. You know, there may be a way to resolve the issue if they speak to somebody like you, and try to find the way to bring the property to compliance, or, you know, just kind of assess what cost and timeline it's going to take. But finding that information after you've entered the contract and realizing you're dealing with a city hall that's not going to give this information to you within that 10-day period. They're going to give it to you in 20 business days. And maybe they're one of these city halls that runs only 4 days out of the week. You know,
4 tens.
Exactly. Yeah. You know.
So
all of that is a huge factor, but having there's not necessarily a need to wait to be in contract to get that information. It's available to anybody that can be requested directly from us, and we're happy to provide it so that they make a better assessment of, you know, whether the property is clean or whether it's got a few things that need to be tweaked.
So today, agents are only used to going to their title company.
Sure.
And again, I wanted to give access to Reliable to everybody. From the point where when you're listing your property or before you need to refinance your property, we don't want to come up with finding these solutions. We want to be proactive instead of reactive.
Correct.
So if we can do the part of the process this way, which basically a lot of real estate professionals are doing right now to protect their sellers, to protect their transactions, my goal, and I know our goal, both of our companies, is to eliminate that bridge.
Of course.
And make things a lot smoother.
Exactly.
So, for example, property owners, they could reach out to Reliable Lien Search.
Absolutely.
Agents, they could reach out to Reliable Lien Search, where typically most companies, they only want to work with title companies, people ordering bulk orders. They say, you know what? I don't want to deal with Ben because Ben he might only have one search. So that was kind of like, that's a breakthrough for us.
Absolutely.
Because the access and availability to that information is there.
That is true.
And
it's not subject to the property being in contract or it being only accessible via a title company or a real estate attorney. It's accessible to anybody that wants the information. And you know, for a few years we've had the opportunity to present to some of the local associations, you know, of realtors and what have you. And we have established a relationship with a few agents. And you know, I'd like to highlight that there have been some that have realized I can be proactive. You know, before placing a listing, you know, property in a listing, or helping an investor, maybe a cash buyer, somebody that, you know, is maybe does not have the traditional closing contract, and or, you know, even an investor that's going to go, you know, bid at the whole courthouse steps. Those are people that, you know, are going to be maybe just a 1 or 2 deal, you know, a month situation, but the information that they're getting to make that informed decision before they make that investment is huge.
And these are things protecting the, you know, specifically, and we do a lot of trainings with realtors.
Sure.
These are things to protect the property owner.
Of course.
Your client.
Of course.
You know, and their interest. And, you know, we touched on a really important situation. For example, my dad is in the animal clinic business. He has people coming all the time for rabies tags in Miami-Dade County. So again, there's a lot of disconnect. There's some violations that we find that have not been recorded to properties, right?
Correct.
How does that work?
Well, in the case of the animal citations, you know, sometimes it could be a dog that's being walked on the sidewalk without a leash. Or maybe an officer realizes they're not wearing their tag. They may not necessarily know where this
where's
tenant
the dog from?
Exactly, and so there's not really an actual property address that the violation is connected to.
Do you get, so have you ever heard of, like, and you deal with this a lot, have you ever heard of, like, the dog not belonging to the, like, for example, it was an open yard situation. The dog, or, you know, pit bulls, you're not allowed to have, you know, where a property owner was, you know, cited for something that,
Exactly,
you know.
and it could be just because it happened in front of that property owner's property.
Correct.
You know, on the other side of the fence.
Correct.
And that happens to be the site violation, you know, or the violation site, excuse me.
These are things that get picked up. I mean, in all.
They can easily attach to a property once you search that address and you, you know, you realize that the citation, you know, took place, or the violation took place in front of that parcel, and the officer just happened to put that as a citation address, and you know, it's just
what
as
is
easy.
what is the oldest one that you've seen? Where the city has, held on for such a long time?
6-7 years, maybe beyond that.
Wow.
And some of them are accruing recurring fees. Where now the amount of the citation seems, it's over $10,000 maybe, and it either needs to be negotiated or some kind of paperwork needs to, be presented showing that the property owner did not own this dog.
Yeah.
The citation just happened in front of their property. Sometimes they will accept that, but the fines do accrue.
Yeah.
For something as simple as
and they will not
animal code citation.
And we talk about lien mitigation and fines. They won't negotiate until things are brought into compliance.
That's the first step.
And then for on the construction side, we need to identify deficiencies. The first thing every seller wants to know in a hardship situation, we're selling our property. How do we bring this into compliance?
Oh, of course.
What will the lien be negotiated for? Even sometimes. Look, I'm just going to say one thing, and you tell me what you think about it. When I say reoccupancy, what do you think? For example, reoccupancy inspections.
Right.
I mean, they're being used in about maybe 5 or 6 jurisdictions in Miami-Dade County.
Yeah. There's some jurisdictions. There's one particular city hall, I think it's Miami Springs, that will not issue even a lien search result.
Wow.
Without doing that inspection first.
So they've triggered
reversed
that.
The order. They've reversed the order of things. rather than giving you the information.
So they won't disseminate the lien search to you until the reoccupancy has been complete.
Yes.
And the purpose of the reoccupancy is basically in areas where Miami-Dade County has older housing stock. They're going to look for open permits, code violations.
Bring it current. Absolutely.
And some cities even, and it goes in waves, like sign codes and municipal ordinances. Sometimes things are, relaxed. I've even seen cities, North Miami, they're looking for hot water heaters. They're not looking for a threeplex that's an existing threeplex that is on the computer is a twoplex.
Sure.
They're looking for all types of unpermitted stuff.
Yeah.
These people in these houses, I mean, it's so sad. A lot of them are older residents. They're selling their property. Some of them, don't have the means to correct these violations.
Right. And
they're hardship.
And in fairness to the sellers too, many of these things that come up, perhaps they're not aware that they're in violation, or perhaps they're not aware that they're out of compliance.
Yeah.
In many cases, sadly, they've inherited the problem from the last owner, and they were not aware. Maybe a lien search, was not done in the prior transaction, and so they were not informed that there was a citation in place from the previous owner. And so many times, they inherit these problems or are within this problem, not knowing that that's what's going on, in terms of the city. So, in all fairness to the sellers, I think sometimes, when these issues come up, it's very, very easy to point the finger and say, hey, these guys were going to try to sell this property with this going on. And I don't think that's always the case. I think sometimes they're just not informed.
Yeah, sometimes they're not informed. Sometimes the contractor didn't call for a final inspection.
Yeah.
Sometimes the work wasn't done to plans.
Sure.
But we've seen so many outcomes through, our couple years in doing education. And
we've dealt with situations where it's very simple. The inspector went back to his office and forgot to update the status of that permit. And it's something as simple as an administrative, just pulling the records and realizing our final was done. It had passed, but the status was not changed, or the computer did not take the change at the time. So there's a lot of factors that can affect the information. And
what's amazing to me is you saw as a title agent what was going on with the processing of lien searches. Is that
Absolutely.
Is that what encouraged you to mold and build Reliable?
Yes, absolutely. At the time, we were dealing with one particular company, and the information that we were receiving was presented, pretty easy to read. But again, I think that what set us apart is being able to provide, just a summary in that front page. I kind of highlighted the important information. Every city has different forms. Everyone provides the information with in different methods. A status of a permit in one city hall may not be the same as in another, you know, the
Yeah.
word pending could be two different things in two different city halls.
Like inactive and expired.
Of course,
Like
yes,
what,
or
you know,
revoked, you know,
revoked.
and so does that mean it?
Doral, permit has been revoked from Miami-Dade
Absolutely.
County. And so many times
Yeah.
with Palmetto Bay and Doral and all these other,
Sure.
you know, even people trying to solve these issues,
Exactly.
they don't even go back to
Yeah.
the county to update them after they've
Of
went
course.
to the city.
So as a title agent, I found myself many times, you know, just not wanting to make the assumption by reading the status of something or, you know, reading the city letter that things were clear or not.
Yeah.
And so I felt that there was a need for a product that identified, you know, whether it was clear or not, a little bit more, seamless, and just make it more convenient all around.
That's amazing because, I mean, that's something that when I first met you, our companies have in common. Meaning, again, you want to provide a good level of service on the lien search side. You want to provide accessibility and solutions to an issue.
Of course.
So that's really remarkable and amazing.
Thank you.
If you guys ever want to come to one of our educational classes or like our Facebook page, we do a lot of education for South Florida residents and real estate
Agents,
professionals.
correct.
Which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about real issues. We're talking about issues affecting South Florida property owners. And again, every situation is challenging and different, but there are different solutions that we can do to help property owners and sellers throughout this hardship situation. And what people ask me all the time, you know, most things in local government are process oriented, and one thing triggers another.
Of course.
So if you don't, and the process is always changing. I know I just threw a whole handbag, you know, threw a whole bag of, but
it's a very loaded statement, but
yeah.
it's true.
So I mean, so that's why, you know, there's a need for both of our services.
Yes. Yeah, I think we have a good understanding of those changes that tend to happen. But how to react to them, how to adjust, who to contact to understand how am I in compliance moving forward.
Yeah.
You know, not something just as simple as a fee amount changing, but just, you know, this is how you're going to request your records. This is how you're going to bring your property to compliance. Codes change, ordinances change, and so, you know, somebody that's in the city halls day to day that is able to decipher that information and adjust to service the end client, you know, is a very great partner to have you know, when you're in the real estate industry. So.
And please, guys, like videos like this, like our educational classes. You'll be provided also with our contact information. Both Brenda and I are here to assist you. Both of our staffs are here to assist you with any situation that you need. And thank you so much, Brenda, for coming out today.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you
It's a
so much.
pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.